Amigos, la próxima entrevista es en inglés, así es que les invitamos a activarse en YouTube si los necesitan, los subtítulos en inglés. Amigos, qué gusto volver a saludarnos en un episodio más de Artelópolis. Hoy desde Maco, zona Maco, y tenemos la oportunidad de platicar con uno de los galeristas más importantes de Estados Unidos, pero además tendrá que contarnos particularmente de uno de los pintores, de uno de los artistas plásticos mexicanos también más relevantes, del que poco se habla y al que poca justicia le hemos hecho a lo largo de los años. Así es que le agradezco que nos reciba en este su espacio a Louis Stern, el director de Louis Stern Fine Arts. Louis, what's an honor talking with us today.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Okay, Louis, Mexicans don't know, or many Mexicans don't know Alfredo Ramos Martínez, and I think it is an artist. It should be known, talked about. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, the artist Ramos Martinez left Mexico at an early date.
Mm-hmm.
He was born in Monterrey in 1871 and came to Mexico City and was his great first opportunity was that he was requested by the government to create a mural.
Mm-hmm.
Create a menu
Okay.
for a state dinner for a prominent American who was visiting Mexico. And that prominent American happens to be a woman named Amy Apperson Hearst, who was William Randolph Hearst's mother. So she was so taken with the menus that she asked to meet the artist. And that was arranged. He showed her some of the work. She bought a lot of things from him and offered him a grant, a substantial grant, that you think at the time was 500 francs. And with that, he was able to travel and go to Paris. And he was in Paris until 1910, when he comes back to the Revolution. He comes to Mexico City. And here he's welcomed with open arms. His reputation is already established, and he becomes the leader of the Bellas Artes.
Yes.
But his great contribution to Mexican culture was the creation of the Escuela de Aire Libre, where at the height there were over 3,000 students, primarily young people, that studied in those open-air schools. He got married late and had a daughter who was born with a sort of a congenital bone ailment. And I think he just panicked, left Mexico with his wife and daughter, and went to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester.
Yes.
Where he had the daughter completely examined. And they were very, according to the daughter, whom I knew, they were very good to the family. And they told him two things. Look, we recommend you stay in the United States because we think you're going to get better care here. And number two, we strongly recommend that you settle in a sort of a warm climate like the American Southwest, where it would be better for the daughter's condition. So he settles in Hollywood, California, in 1930. And he basically spends the rest of his life in California, with the exception of a trip to Mexico, where he comes here at the invitation of the government to paint murals at the newly created Escuela Normal de Señoritas, which he completed in 1945, and then went back to California. And I think that's probably one of the reasons that he was never really well established. I think I like to say that the Mexicans never really forgave him, and
For
and,
living Mexico.
Yeah, for abandoning Mexico and Mexicans. But he didn't really do that because he had a very strong Mexican spirit.
And we can see that in his themes, in the way he painted, and
Right.
and the people he decided to paint. No.
Yeah, there was this tremendous. He had this tremendous feeling of nostalgia, and coupled with in the early '30s in the United States, especially in California, there was this great interest in Mexican lore.
Mm-hmm.
Like the film, The Mark of Zorro came out, Ramona the play,
Uh-huh.
you know, and architecturally, what was termed a Spanish colonial, was a lot of the homes were created in that style in
Yes.
California.
Uh-huh.
And so there wasn't really much of a interest in Ramos Martínez in Mexico. Part of the reason is that Ramos Martínez was an individual who was sort of somewhat introverted. He was a religious man, and he did not embrace socialism
Mm-hmm.
as a lot of people in the arts
In
that
those
period
times, no? Uh-huh. Exactly.
did in Mexico. I mean, they're very well known. Los Tres Grandes were all, sort of had socialist tendencies.
Yes.
And I first saw Ramos Martínez's work over 40 years ago. And I was very taken with it because I'd never seen it before. I thought it was Diego Rivera.
Uh-huh.
And then I found out that it was Ramos Martínez and took a great interest and thought he was wonderful work that was totally undervalued, underrated, underrecognized. And that was the beginning of my adventure with Ramos Martínez.
And we will talk on that, but I would like to go back and to analyze what was the impact you consider studying in France, coming back to Mexico, then moving to the USA, and mixing techniques, mixing styles, mixing everything.
Yeah. Well, Ramos Martínez at heart was a muralist, and he enjoyed the medium of frescoes.
Yep.
Which is a combination of tempera paints with egg yolk as a binder. And he did a number of frescoes. In addition, some of the paintings he did were done in that technique. When Ramos Martínez left Mexico, what was prevalent here was, if you will, sort of the principles of the Munich School of Painting. You take a group of students and you put them in a sort of a dark room with the light coming from one source, preferably from the north, and you put an inanimate object such as a bust or part of the anatomy or a still life, and you ask the students to paint that. So what Ramos Martínez did is, when he was in Europe, he was at the height of the movement of post-impressionism. So he had experienced what the Impressionists did. The Impressionists painted outdoors. A lot of them did. And that was inherited from the first Barbizon painters, like Corot, who painted outside. They were the first ones to paint outdoors. The Impressionists followed, and so did the post-Impressionists. And Ramos Martínez was influenced by that. And when he comes back to Mexico, that's why he creates these open-air schools.
Mm-hmm. And he also taught part of this generation of muralists, and they consider him a leader or a good example of what a painter should be, no?
Yeah, well, Siqueiros considers Ramos Martínez his master. And Siqueiros was a student of Ramos Martínez. So are other celebrated artists like Fernando Leal, Roberto Montenegro,
Yes.
and last but not least was Rufino Tamayo.
Okay.
In fact, in a oral history that was conducted by a very dear friend and collaborator, the well-known Mexican art historian Margarita Nieto,
Mm-hmm.
who taught in the California University system. She did the oral interview with Tamayo. And basically, she said to me that Tamayo, in essence, had said, you can divide Mexican art in the 20th century in two categories. Before Ramos Martinez, looking at art was like watching an 8mm film in black and white. After Ramos Martinez, it was Technicolor in, in CinemaScope. So
Yes.
that's the impact that Ramos Martinez actually made in Mexico.
Sure. Now, California. What he offered to art, to collectors, to everyone, in order to of style or
Yeah.
possibilities in art?
I think before speaking of California, it's really important to note that one of the things that Ramos Martinez was celebrated for while he was still living in Mexico up until 1929 was the creation of the open air schools.
Mm-hmm.
And what he did is he created exhibitions of the students' works and traveled throughout the world with them. So he was decorated by the King of Belgium for that. And by the time he gets to Los Angeles, the director of the Los Angeles County Museum at Exposition Park knew who he was very well because of the open air school. And that's one of his great contributions.
Uh-huh. Do you know students, special students, important students in these open air schools?
Well, the ones I mentioned.
Like, Siqueiros was in it.
Like Fernando Leal,
Uh-huh.
Roberto Montenegro, and Tamayo, but also Jean Charlot,
Okay.
who was a very important artist, who in turn also taught in the United States.
And they were already known, and they have already traveled.
Yeah,
by
these
the time-
artists
uh-huh.
were known as Mexican artists. Some of them were known in the United States. There were other artists that I'm not familiar with because I've never researched the open air schools,
Mm-hmm.
but they were highly thought of in Mexico, and they made a wonderful contribution to culture as a form of aesthetics and education for young people. So when he gets to California, you've got a combination of his early training, which was a conservative art training. He was a natural draftsman.
Uh-huh.
And then all the influences that he experienced in France, both the Impressionist and Post-Impressionist movements. And while he was in France, he met a lot of artists, including Monet, Picasso, the Spanish-speaking artists like Zuloaga. And he traveled throughout Europe with the celebrated poet Rubén Darío.
Yes.
And Darío spoke very, very highly of Ramos Martinez. So you have a combination of all of these things. When he leaves Mexico, before he leaves Mexico, he's producing a lot of vanity portraits in a classical style. These were, of course, a means of income for him.
Mm-hmm.
He would be commissioned to do a portrait of either an individual or his wife or their daughter, their son, and he would produce that. When he gets to California, his style changes. It's probably a combination of all that he was exposed to and what was going on in California at the time.
Because in Mexico, he was famous for painting flowers, blossoms. That changes, no, in California.
Yeah, he didn't. I mean, he did some, but Ramos Martinez always painted bouquets of flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a number of examples in our inventory that came out of the estate. But he starts painting indigenous Mexican figures, peasants, farmers, also Zapatistas,
Yes.
Both historical and also a romanticized concept version of that.
Would you call it a Mexicanism, or what would you say it is?
Maybe a nativism, you know. I mean, it was definitely Mexican, but you had a similar activity in different Latin American countries. This was a period of a lot of upheaval.
Yes.
And a lot of, yeah. But I mean, he was deep down Mexican. And all of his subjects were indigenous Mexicans. There were subjects he dealt with in interior scenes, home life, church, interior of a church, couples, people, individuals making pottery, making pulque,
Yes.
you know, and so on and so forth. He, for him, it was contemporary Mexican genre. And that was fortuitous because there was a demand in California for that subject matter, you see. And one of the things that really helped Ramos Martínez is there was a celebrated set decorator that worked for Cecil B. DeMille by the name of Harold Grieve, who took a great interest in Ramos Martínez.
Okay.
Then Grieve retired and became an interior designer. So you could just imagine what his Rolodex was like.
Sure.
Because he knew everybody in Hollywood.
Sure, sure.
And Ramos Martínez, his works ended up in a collection of Gary Cooper, Jimmy Stewart, Alfred Hitchcock.
Wow.
Quite a number of artists, celebrated actors.
Yes, and
people other people that were in Hollywood. In fact, I think in 1933, he was commissioned to paint the whole entry of a home on North Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills that belonged to Joe Swerling, who was a very well-known screenwriter. And the theme was La Guelaguetza.
Wow.
And existed up until a few years ago when the house was demolished. Fortunately, the mural was saved by a collector, and it's currently in California. And we have studies for that mural that we have exhibited, and it's a wonderful, wonderful mural.
Luis, you were telling us about your interest, and when you saw the work of Ramos Martínez for the first time, well, what did you do as a gallerist, as a dealer with it, and how the story ended to having you the heritage and everything?
Yeah, well, that's interesting because one of my tenets as an art dealer is to recognize under-recognized artists. And if you see in this booth, I have a number of these artists that never really received their due. They were known in their lifetime, as was Ramos Martínez, but never got the sort of traction they deserved. Part of the problem was California was very, very far away in the United States from the epicenter of the art world in New York.
Okay.
That was part of the problem.
Okay.
And then as I looked at Ramos Martínez's work, I was really impressed with the quality. And to me, I liked it better than any other Mexican artist that I had ever seen. And that was one of the reasons why I undertook as a mission the, if for lack of better words, the promotion of this artist's work. I regret never having met him, but he passed away in 1946 in Los Angeles, shortly after returning from Mexico. Yeah.
And what about Luis Stern Fine Arts, having his work? What's your experience? Who likes his work? Who's Ramos Martínez collector?
We have a large American-based collectors for Ramos Martínez. I did my first major exhibition in 1991, and I timed it at a gallery in Beverly Hills, and I timed it to open at the same time as the big show in Los Angeles at the County Museum of Art, Splendors of Mexico. And a lot of very well-known Mexicans came to Los Angeles for that show. And they came to my gallery to see the exhibition. And they actually bought from my show. There were very prominent Mexican collectors who came in and saw an opportunity, and they did buy, as well as Americans. And I continue to sell to Americans from all over the country. I've sold to Europeans as well. Everybody likes Ramos Martínez. His style is universal and very appealing. And it's also, it's a bit dated, but that's a big plus because people like work from that period. There's a lot of romance associated with Ramos Martínez's work.
Yeah. And also, like, for example, I think that the technique painting on newspaper for many people should be also really interesting or particular.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because Ramos Martínez started painting on newsprint when he was living in France between that period up to 1910 when he comes out of Mexico. And he traveled throughout Europe, France, the Low Countries. And one day he was in Brittany, I believe. It was a holiday weekend. And he found himself without materials. And so he went to the concierge of the
hotel,
where he was. And he said, look, I'm an artist. I'm here. I love this landscape, but I don't have anything to paint on. I said, can you direct me to a nearby art supply store? He said, well, sir, I'm sorry, but everything's closed because of the holiday. So he said, but I have an idea for you. He goes in the back and comes out with a stack of newspapers. So the artist took them and started painting on them.
What a great anecdote. Well, Luis, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for bringing to Mexico Ramos Martínez art. And I hope there are many people who meet him, who know him, and, well, it's like, because it is a name we should all know and recognize.
Yeah, he'll receive his due in Mexico. You know, you can't avoid Ramos Martínez, you know, and he's considered by many to really be the father of Mexican modernism for all he did.
Undoubtedly.
And I take a great deal of pride in representing his estate, which I've done close to 40 years.
For sure, you have done it brilliantly. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alejandro.
Thank you. Amigos, pues aquí una plática interesantísima. Descubran, por favor, a este artista y nos vemos la próxima semana con una emisión más de Artelópolis. Amigos, el próximo episodio de Artelópolis hablará de Alfredo Ramos Martínez. Si están en Maco o piensan venir, no se pierdan el stand AB 104 de Louis Stern Fine Arts y aquí descubrirán. Louis, an invitation for people to come.
Wonderful. Bienvenidos to Zonamaco.
Así es que no se pierdan esta oportunidad de conocer un artista mexicano fundamental. Ya lo descubrirán. Buenísimo. And another one to invite people to see the video, to watch the video. Amigos, Artelópolis le rinde homenaje a un artista mexicano algo olvidado, pero fundamental en la historia, Alfredo Ramos Martínez. Y tenemos la oportunidad de platicar con Louis Stern, quien es su representante o el representante de su obra tras la gerencia. Louis, please invite people to watch Artelópolis.
Yes, please watch it. I think you'll enjoy it.
Desde luego que lo van a disfrutar y van a aprender y descubrir de verdad algo.